themselves more at the mercy of that damned sickness. Not exactly floating on clouds, Florence Nightingale Borg of empathy levels of concern for his son. In 1931, the Guevaras moved yet again, this time to Buenos Aires itself, where Celia would give birth to their third child, Roberto, a year later. This kind of chaos, this economic, financial, and career instability, nobody really has a job, you just got to keep moving, you're always worried about money. This is quite common in the lives of people who end up with larger-than-life personalities, I suppose. Following medical recommendations, the family kept traveling back and forth between the dry climate of Cordoba province and Buenos Aires in the hopes of alleviating young Ernesto's condition, but there was no apparent pattern in the manifestation of his affliction, which may mean that it had some psychosomatic elements. Unable to attend to his business and with no hope of improving his son's health, Ernesto Sr. started feeling unstable and unable to do anything. So a friend of the family recommended the dry climate of a spa town called Altagracia, so the Guevaras decided to move there indefinitely. And again, you're not going to have friendships forming and social networks forming and groups forming, which is a kind of an impediment to the healthy development of a child's empathy. Despair crept in on Ernesto Sr. He was unable to work while the family funds kept shrinking. He suffered from insomnia and felt isolated, further distancing himself from his children, and an emotionally absent father has been statistically quite closely tied to a lack of empathy in the child, in particular in the sons. Meanwhile, Celia became the fun-loving mother that engaged the three children in activities like hiking, swimming, and mule riding. She gave birth to their fourth child, Ana Maria, in January 1934. The financial situation of the Guevaras was becoming strained due to the fact that neither Ernesto nor Celia knew how to handle money in a practical manner. This is also true of a lot of people who end up on the left. They have parents who don't really seem to understand or manage the value of money very well. In other words, we were always broke, therefore money is bad. I fight with my girlfriend about money, therefore we should eliminate money, because that's really the problem, right? They became famous for their extravagant lifestyle, giving dinner parties, going on frequent vacations, owning a car, and employing 3 servants. This is a kind of economic entitlement. No matter what the income, this is how we must live. And this kind of great Gatsby hollowing out of a debt-ridden lifestyle is pretty stressful and chaotic and catastrophic, I would say, for children's development. The family enjoyed all these luxuries despite constant financial difficulties. Ernesto Sr. wrote, "They were really bad times for us, so full of economic difficulties. The children were getting bigger. Ernesto still had his asthma. We spent a lot on doctors and remedies. We had to pay for domestic help because Celia couldn't manage alone with the kids. There was school, rent, clothes, food, trips. It was all outgoing costs with little coming in." Now, again, the idea of moving somewhere and getting a job and just working on being stable for your kids doesn't seem to have really particularly come up a lot. Now, it's not just financial difficulties that were problematic in the Guevaras, or among the Guevaras. The hot-tempered Celia and Ernesto, defying absolutely zero stereotypes of South American or Spanish-based people, started having regular shouting matches, the stories of which became well known in Altagracia. According to one of Shay's childhood friends, to escape his parents' arguments, the boy would flee the house and hide in the brushy countryside, only returning after things had calmed down. According to Celia's closest friends, the cause of the fights was Ernesto's infidelity. In an interview, one of Shay's cousins would later remark, "Everybody knew he was a ladies' man. Celia knew. All the time. At the time, though, divorce was illegal in Argentina, so Ernesto and Celia decided to stay together despite their marital problems." Now, Shay's health did improve during his stay in Altagracia, but he still suffered from occasional asthma attacks. The young boy joined the local gangs of children, the Barras, and started riding bicycles and playing games like trench warfare with them. I guess that came in helpful later in Cuba. His violent side was already showing when he started organizing rock fights between warring Barras. Ernesto Sr. recalled that his son would get into frequent fistfights with his Barra rivals and would become uncontrollable with rage if he felt he had been unjustly reprimanded or punished. In an article published by one of Che Guevara's cousins, it was revealed that Che also delighted in torturing animals from a very young age. So, I don't know. I don't know if he wet his bed. Arson and torture of animals, one of the three signs of sociopathy, according to my understanding, and you will see how this looks when somebody grows up in just a few minutes. So, when he got his asthmatic attacks, Shea would have to spend his days confined in bed, not even able to walk. He filled up the long hours with reading and playing chess. However, when the conditions subsided, he would be eager to go out and retest his physical boundaries. Unlike Robert Louis Stevenson and other people who had a lot of illness confinement as children, his language skills improved considerably as a result of reading and writing and making up your own stories and games and so on. Unlike Ernesto Sr., Celia, his mother, encouraged her son's outdoor activities despite the dangerous consequences. On numerous occasions, the boy was carried home by his friends, hardly able to breathe. Because of her son's health condition, Celia tutored the boy at home, teaching him to read and write, as well as exposing him to poetry and philosophy. During this period, young Ernesto formed an incredibly strong bond with his mother, a bond that would last until the day he died. She was now his favorite parent. Or perhaps he could be called the substitute husband. So moms who are not emotionally connected to the fathers, right, to their husbands, will often gravitate towards a boy as a substitute husband, kind of cling to him and use him for as a way of getting back against the husband by showing intimacy and happiness and so on. And it's really, really toxic. And as we see, the Oedipal complex described by Freud became quite fascinating for him later on in life. And if a man grows up to be the kind of man which we'll see Che Guevara grew up to be, then looking at how he was parented is really, really important, as I talked about in a recent video about Elliot Rodger. While Ernesto Sr. didn't participate much in his son's development, Celia had an almost symbiotic relationship with the boy that set him apart from the rest of her children. The home tutoring, however, wasn't meant to last. And this fusion between a needy and dysfunctional mother and a son, to the exclusion of the other children, often produces grandiosity on the part of the child. I can do everything. I'm smarter at everyone than anything. Everyone should do what I say because she has such control and such a lack of boundaries with the mother. Altagracia's educational authorities eventually ordered the family to send their boy to school. In March 1937, 9-year-old Ernesto entered elementary school, starting at the second grade level. So he's been homeschooled, really, for the first 9 years of his life. All right. Elba Rossi di Oviedo Zelaya, and I apologize for all the mispronunciations. The school's headmistress and Shea's third-grade teacher remembered him as a mischievous, bright boy, undistinguished in class, but one who exhibited leadership qualities on the playground. Che Guevara later noted that Elba Rossi had been a strict disciplinarian and was always spanking him. In elementary school, Ernesto became famous for his exhibitionist behavior that shocked the adults and awed his peers. He ate chalk during class, drank ink out of a bottle, explored a dangerous abandoned mineshaft, and played bullfighter with a ram. This is sort of like Michelle Rhee, the Washington school superintendent who tried to reform the schools, who ate a bee that flew into her classroom just to get the kids' attention. As a kid, Ernesto also engaged in borderline criminal behavior. In the company of his Barra friends, he went around Altagracia shooting out streetlights with a slingshot. To settle a score with a rival gang member, Ernesto shat on the ivory keys of a piano that belonged to his rival's parents. I guess they then played chop shits. Anyway. On another occasion, he shot burning firecrackers through a neighbor's window and into a dinner party, scattering the guests and ruining the event. His parents' social status allowed him to get away with all of these transgressions. Now, the Spanish Civil War began in 1936 when young Ernesto was 8 years old. And for more on this, you can, of course, read George Orwell's Homage to Catalonia. His mother's sister Carmen stayed with the family while her husband was deployed as a correspondent for a Buenos Aires newspaper. She read the letters she got from him to the entire clan, bringing home the reality of the war in all its details, and inspiring Ernesto Jr. to follow the unfolding events by marking the movement of the Republican and fascist armies on a map. And there was great hope for the left anarchists that the Spanish Civil War was going to bring to fruition the communist anarchist dream of a propertyless, stateless society. It generally descended into the usual totalitarian horror show, but we'll talk about that in another podcast or video. But the fact that his father was out there basically praising the war, writing about how wonderful it was and how exciting it was, these things have a very, very deep impression upon an 8-year-old boy. Now, of course, September 1939, World War II began in earnest after the British declared war on Germany for the invasion of Poland, and Ernesto Sr. threw his energy into the pro-Allies Action Argentina group. He and his colleagues monitored suspicious activities in their community, fearful of a Nazi infiltration or a possible invasion. Ernesto Jr. was very enthusiastic about joining the youth wing of Action Argentina. All the free time he had outside of his playtime and studies he spent collaborating with us, recalled his father. So Che, or Ernesto Jr., had sex for the first time with a servant girl from a friend's house when he was about 14. He and his friends continued to target women of low social status, primarily servants, for sex. This behavior continued into his adulthood. So basically this preying upon the economic underclasses and then complaining about capitalists preying upon the economic underclasses is obviously just a matter of psychological projection. That he himself, just like Marx, preyed upon women of low status sexually and then thought that the major problem was the United Fruit Company. According to one of his childhood friends from Altagracia, young Che earned the nickname Fast Rooster when he, in the middle of having dinner with his friends, forced a servant girl to climb onto the table and had sex with her. After he finished, says the friend, he got rid of the poor devil and continued eating as if nothing had happened. So, I mean, just take a moment and picture this, that you're having, as a mid-teens, you're having dinner with some friends, and a servant girl is basically thrown onto the table, is raped, is thrown off the table, and then the rapist sits down and just continues to eat as if nothing had happened. This is so astoundingly disturbed and disturbing behavior that it's almost impossible to comprehend. This is sort of like a layer of Dantean hell that pure psychopathy and sociopathy would be inhabiting. And this is this rapist of the underclass, of economic underclasses, is praised, and people wear his t-shirts. A few years later, Che had a romantic relationship with his cousin, the daughter of his Aunt Carmen. Quote, "One day we were playing on a terrace of my house and Ernesto asked me if I was now a woman," recalled the cousin about the beginning of their relationship. "Ernesto was so handsome." His cousin wasn't the only one who was attracted to him. "The truth is, we were all a little in love with Ernesto," confessed a well-born girl from Cordoba. Because sociopaths, rapists, people who engage in physical assault as children and so on, if they're handsome and charming, then the world, tragically, and the future silk print industry is their oyster. In March 1942, Ernesto began attending one of the best state-run high schools, the Colegio Nacional de Influencias in Cordoba. A year later, ending their 11-year stay in Altagracia, the Guevara clan moved to Cordoba. In high school, continuing his exhibitionist behavior, or no boundaries and sexual predation, Ernesto managed to earn himself several nicknames. As Che's friend Alberto Granado recalled, they called him El Loco, Crazy Guevara. He liked to be a little bit of a terrible lad. He boasted about how seldom he bathed, for example. They also called him Chancho, which is pig. He used to say, "It's been 25 weeks since I washed this rugby shirt. How about a hug, comrade?" During his teenage years, Ernesto took great interest in the works of Freud and Bertrand Russell. He was now reading everyone from the ancient Greeks to Aldous Huxley, Benito Mussolini on fascism, Joseph Stalin and Karl Marx on Marxism. He also enjoyed the works of Franz Kafka, whose novels had a profound impact on him, and Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre, of course, was also a sexual predator who used his position at a university to engage in threesomes with Simone de Beauvoir, his wife, who actually kind of hated them. In 1945, the 17-year-old Ernesto decided to take a course in philosophy and became fascinated by the discipline. Not so much at practicing it, I guess just studying it. He began writing the first of several philosophical dictionaries where he quoted passages from his favorite authors. On love, patriotism, and sexual morality, he consulted Bertrand Russell's Old and New Sexual Morality. Bertrand Russell, serial affair-monger, not exactly a sexual predator, but not of the highest level of romantic integrity. He was also captivated by Freud's work, Dreams, Libido, Narcissism, and the Oedipus Complex. He quoted Nietzsche on death and Jack London on society. He was also interested in Hitler's thoughts on Marxism, which he found in Mein Kampf. The dominant figures of his later diaries were Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and Vladimir Lenin. So, pretty much rapist, parasite on the working class, and mass murderer. Can't go badly from here, right? Around the time he became involved with philosophy and psychology, his family and friends were noticing that he became a lot more withdrawn. He no longer sought constant attention, preferring isolation instead. In May 1947, Ernesto's paternal grandmother died after suffering a stroke, leaving her grandson inconsolable. Celia, his younger sister, recalled that she'd never seen Ernesto so grief-stricken. It must have been one of the great sadnesses of his life. His grandmother's death and his desire to cure his asthma influenced his decision to become a physician, and in 1948, he entered the University of Buenos Aires to study medicine. Ernesto's inner turmoil is very apparent in a poem he wrote when he was 19. I know it! I know it! If I get out of here, the river swallows me. It is my destiny. Today, I must die. But now willpower can overcome everything. These are the obstacles I admitted. I don't want to come out. If I have to die, it will be in this cave. The bullets. What can the bullets do to me if my destiny is to die by drowning? But I am going to overcome destiny. Destiny can be achieved by willpower. Die, yes, but riddled with bullets, destroyed by the bayonets. If not, no. Drowned, no. A memory more lasting than my name is to fight, to die fighting. Now, his grandfather killed by drowning, he almost died by drowning, and so on. So a lot of these early childhood memories are still resonating in his mind. By the early 1950s, a deep-seated hostility towards the United States had already taken roots in Ernesto's mind. Now, for those who don't know the intricate history of the expansion of Marxism and communism, there was to be a world revolution which was to be provoked by reminding the working classes of how badly they were being exploited by the bourgeoisie and capitalist classes, and the United States was a huge problem for a communist thought. Because according to communist thought, the communist economies, Marxist economies, Soviet economies, should be vastly outstripping, without the profit motive, vastly